I am bullish on the Florida Gators in 2025. Here's why.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free every single podcast and on YouTube. Happy Tuesday. I am Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with New York Giants on SI. Today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And there's a few reasons to be pretty bullish on the Florida Gators. And just to be clear, when I say bullish, I don't mean that my expectation is to win a national championship. I more so mean that my expectation, regardless of FanDuel's win total, love you as a sponsor, greatly disagree with your 6.5 win total for the Florida Gators this year. I already hammered the over on that one. But what I mean is regardless of the win total, regardless of what the general perception is, like this is a team that I think minimum, I just destroyed my hand on this desk, minimum college football playoff. That's it. If it's worse than that, I think that this season will be a complete disappointment. And again, this is, of course, if there's major injuries or anything like that happens, then fine. We adjust those as they happen. But just overall, I think this is a college football playoff team. I really do. And look, I think that if you're not used to this show and this is your first exposure or one of your first experiences with the show, maybe that seems a little homerish, but I do think that here we try to be generally realistic. I mean, last year, look, and I know a lot of people bring up that I said Florida would beat Miami, but I still said this was a 6 or 7 win team in the regular season, which was right, by the way. It was just not the way I thought it would happen at all. But so I do think that I've been generally on with it, but I do think that this roster right now is I think the roster is the biggest reason for why I think that this team's going to be really good. And I know like that can be a little silly to just be like, oh yeah, the roster, duh, the people playing the game. But I mean that the way that this roster has been built, the time that it's been built, as in how they've built it, I think that they're doing things the right way. Right. And I've said this before where I think it's important to be able to navigate in this portal era and specifically this portal era that we're in, because, things are going to change. The portal is either going to get better or worse. We'll figure it out. But the game's going to change whenever that happens as well. Now, I think this portal era, the way that you properly build a team, do most of your work through high school recruiting, retain your talent, and fill in any roster holes in the portal. But I do think most of your work has to be high school recruiting. And I don't necessarily think that, there's a number. Like, I don't think it has to be like, 85% of your roster needs to be high school. I don't think so. I also do think that it's important to acknowledge the differences in the portal where Jameer Grimsley was on campus at Alabama for like 6.5 seconds and then had to hit the portal to come to Florida, even though, he's only ever played for Florida. That's it. He's only ever going to play for Florida, hopefully. But he was a transfer portal addition. So I do think that there's levels to it where Graham Mertz came in to be QB1. Like, that's adding a starter right away as opposed to adding Jameer Grimsley, who's an extension of the high school class. And so I do think that there's levels to it. But I think that the way Billy Napier and this Florida Gators team or this Florida Gators staff have built this team is the right way to do it. Do a lot of your recruiting through high school, pull from the portal. people on social media and any other format that they want to troll Florida, like you can bring up, oh, Florida doesn't have a good portal ranking right now. And it's like, yeah, because they haven't been bringing in portal players. Because they haven't been trying to bring in a lot of portal players. They're not 8 scholarships under the limit, like some schools in the state of Florida that are very portal reliant. They're not. Florida has a lot of high school players. And I know that a lot of people, after the season, a lot of people went, oh, well, they got NIL coming in, going to be able to go out into the portal, get some big fish. And that didn't really happen. But a lot of that was because of roster retention. I do think that it's important to say, hey, we'll do most of our work in high school or multi-year portal acquisitions. And then we'll go into the portal to add some key players that help us win. Now, like Ohio State last year, I'm just using them because they're the most recent, did a lot of their work in high school recruiting, retained a lot of their talent. And then what did they do? Will Howard, Quinshon Judkins. I do know that also, there were a lot of people that were sour on Will Howard before going to Ohio State. I thought he was a very good college quarterback. For the NFL, different story. But I thought he'd be a very good college quarterback. So Will Howard, Quinshon Judkins, Caleb Downs, like they went out into the portal and they just added the best players they can get. And I think that's a process that is going to take some time. And I do think that Florida will probably need a bit more NIL investment in order to go grab big fish in the portal. But they're using the portal the way that it should be, as if it's free agency and you're addressing needs there. You don't need to build your roster out of that, because then you have no continuity, and continuity and chemistry matter in football. This isn't Madden College Football 25. This isn't any of that, where it's just like, yeah, just go get the best players regardless of anything. And every year you can go and get better players, and then just don't worry about it. Chemistry matters. Retention matters. And I think that for Florida, it's not just this past year, right? It's the past 2 or 3. And of course, where they've gone into the portal and added key players. And of course, like there are the misses, right? Like there's the Joey Slackmans of the bunch that we get excited for. I was very excited for what Joey Slackman could be. But that also doesn't mean that the portal's bad or that the process is bad in the portal. You could take the top, I don't know. I'll even give it a small sample size. You can take the top 10 highest ranked recruits or highest ranked commits from high school, the portal, any mix, right? You can take the top 10 NFL draft picks where they've got years of film, months and months of intense, extensive research on these players. You can have all that, and there's still misses. So I don't necessarily get too hung up on, well, Joey Slackman wasn't a hit in the portal. He wasn't, right? Like he didn't contribute the way we thought he would. Doesn't mean that they're bad in the portal or they stink at it. They got Graham Mertz drafted. They got Graham Mertz drafted. That was crazy, right? That was a big, and Florida was a big part of that. I want to make that abundantly clear. This is not like Anthony Richardson where, oh, he's going to get drafted no matter what just because of his physical skills. This is what Graham did at Florida got him drafted, because if he went to the draft out of just Wisconsin, he wasn't getting touched. They would have given him a clipboard and said, hey, welcome to the coaching staff. Like that's what it would have been. So I do think that their portal approach is great. I think that in general, some of it's just a crapshoot. Sometimes you're just not going to be able to get the guy. Sometimes the guy isn't going to work out. But I will say that Florida has done a great job. And also one thing I love that Florida has done is Joey Slackman didn't work out on the field, right? He didn't contribute a ton on the field. He also got hurt for a bit. But even before the injury, he wasn't helping on the field. But it's been very well documented what he brought as a culture guy. So he still had value. It just wasn't the value that we thought he'd have. And I will say that I'm fairly certain there's been some underwhelming presence with him, or that there was some underwhelming feelings about how he didn't work out at Florida. But also, again, I think that he still had value. It just wasn't the on-field value we expected. I think how Florida has built this roster has been fantastic. A priority on the premium positions. which, I love. And, we're about to spend a few minutes talking about that on Locked On Gators. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Knicks. I want to be like, oh, yeah, Knicks in 5, but it's the Celtics. I'm not going to do that. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and while live. With player props, performance trends, like you click on a player's picture and it'll tell you how they've been trending in that category. Like Jalen Brunson points, it'll tell you his last 5 or so games. So helpful. Same game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day, we are available daily and free reviews in the podcast and on YouTube. And like I mentioned, this roster is a big reason and this roster is a big reason for why I'm bullish on this team. And part of that is because I think that this team is very well built at the premium positions, right? And for just a simple refresher, I am a firm believer in positional value, right? That doesn't mean I don't care about the positions that aren't considered premium positions, but I am a firm believer in positional value. I'm a firm believer in, and I will also say this because I know I'm going to get this comment because I always do, where people go, oh, well, center is the most important position. I disagree. And so does the people that actually make decisions throughout everything. So I'm not going to talk about center here, although I do love Jake Slaughter. I do think having a reliable center matters. I know there's going to be people that say, hey, like, stop giving your opinions. Just report the news. Go find another podcast. I'll say that. But I'm a firm believer in premium positions. And we talk about how Florida matches up at premium positions with other schools. And at some point during this offseason, we are going to, especially once the portal closes and everybody's got spots, we'll spend time talking about where exactly the other teams on Florida's schedule match up at the premium positions. But the premium positions are the most valuable positions in football. They are the positions where you see teams spend more first-round draft picks, where you see teams constantly reset the market and increase the salary that they're paying in the NFL. It's where college teams are prioritizing players and prioritizing NIL. It's where teams are investing because they're the most valuable, because they're the most impactful. Those 5 premium positions. Quarterback. I think every Florida Gators fan, or almost every Florida Gators fan, would say to give them DJ Lagway over any other quarterback on this roster. And I know a lot of Florida Gators fans would say, hey, give me DJ Lagway over any other quarterback in the country. Not that he's the best quarterback in the country right now, but you got a true sophomore there. Showed a lot of promise last year. It makes sense. So I think that quarterback, I think basically every Florida Gators fan would say, hey, give me Lagway over any other quarterback on the schedule. I'd say that. I don't care. And we'll talk about the schedule in the next segment, but I'd say that. And I know there's people that think like, oh, Arch Manning. He ain't shown me diddly squat to change my opinion on that one. So, nope. So I'll say that. Garrett Nussmeier, not a big fan. But I think that basically every Florida Gator fan would say, hey, give me Lagway over any other QB. Cool. Got it. Receiver. I think that I am more critical of this receiver room than I think a lot of people, or not even critical. Cautious. I'll say cautious. I think that this receiver room has elite speed. I think they've got a ton of athletic traits that say, hey, you can be successful at this spot. I think they have a lot of players with the athletic traits to be successful. It's just about getting them to actually operate that way, right? So for me, I think this is a receiver room with elite speed, elite athletic traits. But we haven't seen them really be productive. Even J. Michael Sturdivant, wasn't productive. And again, I have no problem saying that a lot of that was probably because of the bad quarterback play and the bad offensive coordinator at UCLA and just the bad coaching staffs he's played under, all that stuff. I have no problem admitting that probably played a pretty significant factor, or probably played a pretty significant part in Jay Michael Sturdivant not being as productive as I think a lot of people were hoping he'd be at this point. But again, I don't fault him for that. I think that's just what it is. I think that's an explanation for it. I don't think it really matters that much. I'm not concerned about it. I don't think many people should be there. It's just elite traits. I just got to see you put it on film. That's it. I think elite traits. Just got to see you put it on film. I get why fans love this room, especially if you play the video games. And it's like, oh, yeah, they're fast as hell. They got size. Oh, hell yeah. I get it. Offensive tackle, hit or miss. I think Austin Barber, long-term, as in the NFL, I think he's got the potential to be a very good right tackle. He's a left tackle right now. I don't think it's his ideal spot. But again, college translates different from the NFL with things like that. You know, a lot of college tackles move to guard in the NFL. It happens all the time. I do think it's hit or miss. I'm buying in on the Austin Barber stock because I'm buying in on Jonathan DeCoster stock on the offensive line. So I will say that. Right tackle, we have no idea. Like no matter who it is, I think many of us think that it'll be Bryce Lovett. And I think a lot of us like Bryce Lovett. But we don't know what he's going to be over the course of a full season because we haven't seen him start over the course of a full season yet. So there's that. Pass rusher, elite. I think pass rusher is another spot where many Florida Gators fans would probably say, hey, give me the Florida Gators pass rush over almost anybody in the country. I can't think of a team off the top of my head that I go, yeah, I'd rather have their pass rush. Like maybe Texas, but I don't really know what they have on the interior as far as proven pass rushing production. Their edge room, elite, sure. I like if we're talking just edges, which I think when we talk premium positions, a lot of people do say edge. But I say pass rusher because I think an interior pass rusher provides a lot of value. So just pass rusher, I wouldn't take a single room over Florida, or I wouldn't take a single school room over Florida. Edge, sure, I would take Texas, but overall pass rusher, hell no. It's Florida. Like that's an elite on paper and even on film, elite. Tyreek Sapp, we know what he is. Caleb Banks, we know what he is. George Gums, I don't think we know what he is. I don't think we do. Because he's still learning the position in general. So I think that what we've seen so far is not even close to the best of what we could see from George Gums. I'm not saying he's going to do it this year, but I do think that his ceiling is a lot higher than we've seen so far. And that's not a knock on him. It's just he's still new to the position. And that's a position that you're going to get better over time. Corner, biggest concern of the premium positions. There's absolutely no proven depth. And you got a bunch of guys who within the past few months have been banged up. I think it's fair to have some concern about corner. Again, I'm not saying that it's a huge concern for me. I do think that the top three are very talented. Just need them to stay healthy. But I think for me, it's that there's no proven depth, which the only way that concern is going to be addressed is by them going out there and proving it. So it's one of those things where, again, like I'm not even saying they're bad. We just don't know. Like, we don't know what Jameer Grimsley is going to be. We don't know Teddy Foster, Ben Hanks, Michael Caraway at the SEC level. We don't know what any of those guys are going to look like. I can't say that I like them or hate them, or I can say that I like them because big fan of Teddy Foster, Jameer Grimsley, and Ben Hanks all coming out of high school. So I can say that I like them, but I can't say that they're proven to be quality at the SEC level, and that's just a thing that, again, they just have to prove it. That's it. There's nothing to do. There's nothing anybody can say or do to convince me. I just got to see them do it. That's it. And then there's also this schedule that is interesting, and I think I land on a different side of things than a lot of people. We'll talk about that on Locked On Gators. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. And I've said it before. I've used Upwork before. It's way, way, way before they were a sponsor. Hell, I used Upwork way before I was even with Locked On, years before I was with Locked On. I'm a believer in Upwork. I am. I had a fantastic experience. I've used them, I think, it was at least 2 times, I think 3, and every time, great experience. So I will say I fully believe in Upwork. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's Upwork, UPWORK.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day, every day. We are available daily and free. We have us in the podcast and on YouTube. And to wrap up today's show, we are going to talk about this Florida Gators schedule for 2025. And I've said this before. I think that the 2025 schedule is notably easier than the 2024 schedule. Okay. And I said I thought the 2024 schedule was one of the hardest schedules of all time in college football. I think you can make the argument it was the hardest schedule of all time. So I will say I think it's one of the hardest schedules of all time in 2024. 2025, I don't think it's as scary. Because I think the thing with 2024, outside of just like one of the reasons that I said that it was so scary last year, or not even scary, just so brutal last year, was because there was no time where you really had even just back-to-back easy games, right? They just didn't exist. And so I think for me, that was a big thing. But also, I think last year you just ran into quite a few teams that, especially talking before the season, you ran into quite a few teams that were expected to be pretty good, right? Miami was expected to be pretty good. FSU, a lot of people thought were going to be really good. They were just coming off their 13-1 season. Texas, Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Kentucky, Texas, and like LSU. A lot of teams that people were expecting to be pretty good. This year, I think quite a few of those teams have fallen off. Okay, and I think that the fact that they've fallen off makes it easier for them. Miami this year, I think that they're going to be worse than they were last year. I think they'll have a better defense, but I think they'll have a considerably worse offense. Regardless of Carson Beck, I think the drop-off from Cam Ward to Carson Beck is huge. So I think that that's different. Also, I had someone in the comments like last week talking about anything I said about Cam Ward. Because prior to the year, I was like, oh yeah, I think that Graham Mertz will be better in week 1 than Cam Ward. But even then, if you go back, I very openly was like, I think Graham Mertz will be better than Cam Ward in week 1 because it's week 1. But if it's week 8, we're having a different conversation and Cam Ward's going to get drafted higher. The thing that threw me off was that I didn't think Cam Ward would be Cam Ward in week 1. I just thought they would take some time. So I think Miami will drop off. I thought Cam was great. FSU, I think they'll be better. Long Island and USF are your non-conference schedules, or that's those 4 are your non-conference. Miami, FSU, Long Island, and USF. Like this is an easier schedule with a better team than you had last year. I think there's legit reason to be bullish there. LIU, USF, you should destroy them. And I'm pretty convinced that that Billy Napier was like, well, I needed a Long Island team because that Locked On Gators guy is from New York, and I need to beat the crap out of something from New York, which I get. I do. I understand it. If Billy hated me, I wouldn't blame him at all. I don't think he does. He seems very nice when we spoke. But if he hated me, I wouldn't doubt him, and I wouldn't blame him. just to throw that out there. Miami and FSU, again, I think Miami will be worse than they were last year. I think FSU will be better. Hard to not be better. Home games that you have this year are Texas, Mississippi State, and Tennessee. I think that Texas will be around the same level they were last year, near the top of the entire country talent-wise. We'll see what happens with Arch long-term, but I think Quinn Ewers was bad last year. So even with the unknown that is Arch, last year quarterback play wasn't great. So even if Arch isn't great, it's not like there's going to be a massive drop off there. Mississippi State, probably going to be pretty bad. I think they'll be better than they were last year, but still bottom of the SEC team. Tennessee, I think they'll be worse. Their offense might be better this year. I know that they lost Nico Yamiliava, brought in Joey Aguilar. I think he might be able to keep their offense on schedule more, but I think their defense will take a drop off. I think that losing James Pierce, Omar Norman Lott, I think those two guys, and I think that's a pretty steep drop off that I don't know if you're going to replace that this year. I don't think you're going to try to, but I don't know if you're going to replace that. So I think Tennessee will be worse this year. Away games, LSU, they did so much in the portal. I just really don't know what they're going to be this year, honestly. It's just tough to gauge. They lost quite a bit on the offensive line. They lost some pretty talented players there. So I don't know what they're going to be. Texas A&M, probably going to be better this year, honestly. So Texas A&M is going to be better this year. Kentucky's going to be better this year, but they were awful last year. Ole Miss, probably going to be worse. Like, I think that on paper, and even on the field, screw paper, on the field, Ole Miss had one of the most talented rosters in the country last year. And by one of, I don't mean top 50. I mean, that was like a top 8 roster talent-wise. Coaching shot him in the foot. A couple stupid mistakes shot him in the foot. I think they'll be worse this year. Georgia, neutral side, I think Georgia will be worse this year. Maybe better quarterback play will actually help them overall. But I think overall, I think they'll be a worse team. And I do think that that's kind of the expectation, which, hey, if Kirby wants to lie to them about, hey, they doubted us, like this year would be the year you'd be telling the truth. I think that a lot of people are doubting Georgia. I think they'll still be very good. I just think they'll be worse than they were last year, and hopefully, at least. So I do think that, again, Florida, I think the schedule this year is easier than it was last year. I think this is a much more talented team this year, much more experienced team this year, and I think they're going to be pretty freaking good. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free for everything in the podcast and on YouTube. We will be back tomorrow. Talk more Florida Gators. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my Red Rook New York Giants on SI, and I'll see you all next time.